But and I mean, like, anytime somebody bigs themselves up, like, most people are gonna kind of have a bad taste in their mouth about it. Makes me think of like something like Jerry Seinfeld. Completely off topic, but this is a comic where he comes off as being very kind of, nose in the air, kind of like too good for other people in some way. I kind of realized at some point, oh no, you know what? The reason people get that is because so many comics are playing the underdog, and Jerry just doesn't do that. He just owns who he is.
Jerry Seinfeld, I did not realize, is really, really into transcendentalism.
Oh, is that right?
The only way, he says, that he was able to survive 8 years of making a situation comedy was that every day at lunch he would go off and do his 20 minutes of mantra work.
Wow.
And then they'd come back and he'd eat lunch on his feet between takes because he had been... And the Transcendentalists are supposed to meditate twice a day. And he says it wasn't until after he retired from doing the sitcom that somebody finally talked him into doing the morning meditation as well as the daytime one. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, because those people are that's a dangerous cult, that, unlike what we're doing. But
let's get back to our dangerous third chapter of the Book of the Law.
But Seinfeld strikes me as, in his brashness and self-confidence and his belief that stand-up comedy is the absolute best thing anyone can do for anything, anyone can do, as being a sort of having a uniquely Thelemic position. He's found, not only has he found his own true will, and he's doing that and doing nothing else in this embrace of like stand-up comedy being the coolest possible thing, and it's the thing that I've devoted my life to. Also, he was being interviewed by David Letterman, and David Letterman was whining, I wish I'd done something good for society. And Seinfeld says something like, why? like you'd rather be a mediocre immigration lawyer than the greatest late night host in the history of the form. What you've actually done is achieve greatness, and if you'd done anything else, whether it was inherently more helpful, like let's admit that immigration lawyers are more helpful than late night hosts. David Letterman achieved perfection as a late night host, and the mighty guru Jerry Seinfeld tells his chila not to despair, because even though he may not believe that he helped people in achieving his own greatness, he's disseminated more greatness throughout the world than if he'd only achieved mediocrity in some other field. So anyway, this is it's important for
it's relevant.
Thelemites not to get hung up on cockiness versus disparagement, because the Scarlet Woman is told to raise herself in pride, and I think all people can take that advice.
Absolutely, yeah, and make yourself shameless before all people.
Shameless before loud and adulterous and shameless before all men.
Yes, and that's a very good perspective to have, and it does say something. Like, I'm talking about, I used to dislike Jerry Seinfeld and thought he was arrogant and this sort of thing, and had that turnaround. So I'm not talking about other people thinking that. I'm talking about me having that moment of clarity when I suddenly realized, okay, wait a second. And that's relevant, because that kind of underdog thing is one of those cultural things that have seeped into our brains and that we were raised on.
When you become a hammer, you sort of see nails everywhere. So the idea that, I thought I was being a little bit stupid in seeing Jerry Seinfeld as like Thelemite par excellence. It's just the dumbest thing. But I just thought I was allowed to go on that tirade because you coincidentally brought up exactly the same figure.
You know what? It's relevant as far as I'm concerned, because it's like we should be looking at things outside of this little closet wizard thing. If we want to think of this as something real that actually takes place in the real world, it ought to be taking place in the real world, and we ought to be able to look at real case studies of it that are outside of magic and outside of technical language. Darkly Splendid Abodes. Released at midnight on the first and third Fridays each month, and available on Spotify and various other streaming services.